Welcome to A Powerless Mage Presents.
Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into an absolutely fascinating essay called Love is a Bond with Reality.
And this isn't just, an academic exercise.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This material is, well, it's incredibly potent. It's not about flowery definitions or poetry. It invites us, and you, to fundamentally rethink one of the most foundational concepts in life, love.
And how getting a better handle on it can lead to some real satisfaction.
Exactly. And solutions, practical solutions to that really common feeling of being stuck or just perpetually dissatisfied with things.
So our mission today is to really explore this transformative idea that love isn't just some fuzzy feeling or, something that happens to you if you're lucky,
Right.
but that it's the single most important bond that connects us directly to the world around us. We're going to try to be persuasive here and show you how adopting this perspective can actually shift your internal power structure. You move from being a passive recipient of emotion to an active agent in your own life.
And the core premise here, it really demands self-reflection. We're being urged not to just accept the definitions that, culture hands down to us.
From movies, romance novels, social media.
All of it. Instead, we're asked to truly examine what love is in its most functional form. Not what it should feel like, but what it actually does.
And if we can redefine it as this structural, functional bond,
Then you gain immense agency over your connection to the world and, crucially, over your own happiness.
Okay, let's unpack this immediately. Because when most of us hear the word love, our brains just default to the romantic side of things.
That's the default setting for sure.
We think of that intense, passionate connection, and those classic categories immediately spring to mind. We all kind of know them.
That's right. And the traditional frameworks, they categorize where we direct the feeling, which is useful, for organizing life, but it doesn't define the fundamental nature of the connection itself.
So you're talking about things like eros.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eros, which is that romantic, passionate love. Then you have philia, the love of friendship, of brotherhood.
And storage for family.
Storge, yeah, that natural love for family, that immediate, often unspoken loyalty. And then there's the big one, agape, that grand, unconditional, selfless love.
But these are all just like containers for the experience.
They're containers. They describe a target of the feeling, but the source material makes a really bold philosophical jump right here.
Okay.
It points out that the standard, dictionary definition of love focuses entirely on feelings. Things like strong attraction, affection, and emotional attachment.
And the argument is that this is the fundamental error we make when we try to understand love.
It's the big mistake.
Yeah.
The traditional definition focuses on what love manifests as. Our material argues that the feeling, the affection, the attraction, it's only the symptom. It's the reflection of love, not the thing itself.
Okay, so it's like a signpost, not the destination.
A perfect way to put it. Think of it this way, and this distinction is critical. The feeling is the thunder. It's loud, it's noticeable, it affects you intensely, you feel it in your bones.
Right.
But the actual core phenomenon, the source of all that energy, is the lightning. It's the underlying structural bond. We get so caught up in the noise of the thunder that we mistake it for the power itself.
That makes so much sense. The emotion, that high of attraction, it's fleeting. It fades. It comes and goes.
Of course.
And if that emotion were the actual definition of love, then, all love would disappear the moment you have a bad day or an argument.
And we know that's not true. But the structural connection, the commitment, the bond that can persist even when the warm, fuzzy feelings aren't immediately present.
So the lightning is the bond.
Exactly. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
If the feeling is just the thunder, then the essential core, the lightning, is the bond. Love is what structurally connects us to reality. It's not some fluid emotional state. It's a fixed yet maintained connection point.
And that structural view immediately unifies all those categories you mentioned earlier.
It does. It brings them all under one roof.
How so?
Well, the love for a partner, the love for a mother, the love for a pet, the source mentions a dog named Comet, or even that deep attachment you might have to a beloved place or a treasured object.
A childhood home or a favorite book.
Right. They are all fundamentally specific personal bonds. They are what connect us to that specific, tangible, existing part of reality. The affection you feel is simply the internal reflection, the emotional barometer of the strength and health of that underlying structural connection.
I see. So if the bond is structural, it implies effort, it implies maintenance, just like a bridge or a building. You don't just feel it, you have to do it.
Precisely. You have to build it and maintain it. And this bond structure immediately explains why love is so crucial to our psychological stability and well-being.
Okay, connect those dots.
If love is the fundamental connection point to existence, then a lack of love, or more accurately, a broken bond, means a disconnect from reality itself. That feeling of being rootless, adrift, or that profound sense of alienation that seems to plague modern life, it might not be a psychological flaw. It might just be a lack of strong, currently maintained bonds to the real world.
So the dissatisfaction isn't that I need more good feelings. The dissatisfaction is that the cable connecting me to reality is frayed.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And furthermore, this bond constitutes a form of appropriation of our world.
Okay, that word appropriation, it often has a negative ring to it.
It does, but here it means something very specific and powerful. It's not just recognizing something exists. It's about internalizing it, claiming it as part of your personal map of reality, thereby making it real for you.
So can you elaborate on the difference between just sort of passively recognizing something and actively appropriating it?
Absolutely. Passive recognition is seeing a beautiful painting and saying, oh, that's nice. Active appropriation, or bonding, is investing your time, your emotion, your energy into that painting.
You research the artist, you hang it in a place of honor.
You allow it to move you emotionally, day after day. You have claimed it. You have made it yours through that commitment. We naturally love what we feel is a part of us, what we have claimed through experience.
So applying that to a relationship, I love my partner, not just as a generic human being, but because she is my partner. I have bonded with her and integrated her into the very structure of my life.
Exactly. Or, going back to the sources example, I love my favorite book, not just because it has words on a page, but because I have made it mine through the experience and the specific emotions it awakens in me. It stops being just ink and paper and becomes a profound part of my personal history. It's an appropriated aspect of my own being.
And this framework even applies to the most intimate bond of all, self-love.
Absolutely. Self-love in this model is the bond specifically associated with myself, with my own being. It's the conscious appropriation of my current reality, my skills, my history, my flaws, my potential, as acceptable and fundamentally good.
So if you struggle with self-love,
according to this definition, you are struggling to accept and bond with the reality of who you currently are. You might be trying to love a future idealized version of yourself instead.
this definition is incredibly actionable. It really is. It moves love from this mystical, sometimes impossible feeling to a concrete, structural element you can observe, invest in, and maintain.
Mm-hmm.
If your bonds are strong and varied, your connection to reality is secure. If your bonds are neglected, you feel disconnected. That's a powerful tool for self-diagnosis.
It reframes the entire discussion about dissatisfaction. If you feel empty, the traditional advice is often to, chase a feeling, wait for someone else to fill a void.
Right. Find the one.
This perspective tells you to actively inspect and repair the specific bonds you have with the world, be it people, activities, values, or your own self. It tells you to be the architect of your own reality.
Okay, let's just pause there. This is a massive shift from the conventional view of love. We want you, the listener, to really internalize this idea before we move on to what is arguably the most radical idea in the sources.
Take a moment with it.
If love is the bond with reality, what specific bonds in your life to people, places, activities, or yourself are currently defining the reality you live in? Are they maintained?
Think about the things you are willing to fight for, to suffer for, to commit energy to. Those are your bonds. Hold that thought as we move into the direction of that bond.
All right, this next part is a big one.
This is perhaps the most counterintuitive yet profoundly empowering idea presented in the sources. Authentic love, in its core structural form, only flows in one direction.
What direction is that?
The direction of what we give. It is fundamentally unidirectional.
Wait. I have to push back hard here because objections are immediately popping up for anyone listening to this.
Of course they are.
We are taught from birth that love is a two-way street, it's an exchange. We all think, but the love we receive, that validation from a partner, the security from our parents, that matters hugely. That's what proves we are worthwhile. So why does this material categorically state that we don't actually receive love?
This is the crucial distinction, and really getting this is the key to unlocking immense personal agency. We have to differentiate between the external action and the internal experience.
Okay.
What we label receiving love, when someone performs a kind or loving action toward us, is actually us loving the idea of being loved. It is not an external feeling being poured into us. It's an internal, self-generated experience of valuation, always.
So, okay, let's walk through a common scenario to make this concrete. A parent sacrifices their time and their money to care for a child. The child feels safe, nurtured. Traditional wisdom says the child is receiving the parent's love. How does this new framework interpret that moment?
So the parent is certainly giving love. They're actively bonding with the reality of their child through sacrifice and commitment. That's their action. The child, however, is internally generating love. Love for the profound realization that they are valuable, that they are protected, that they are significant to this powerful external figure. They are experiencing their own love for the gesture, their own love for the person, and, most powerfully, their own love for the idea of their own security and importance.
So the external act is the stimulus.
And the feeling is the internal valuation of that stimulus. You are the source of the feeling.
So if my spouse remembers some small, specific detail about my life and acts on it, and I feel that rush of appreciation,
Yes.
I am generating my own bond with that gesture, or my own love for the idea that I am known and important enough for that person to perform that gesture.
Precisely. You are the engine. The external act validates your existence, sure, but your capacity to feel whole or appreciated is driven by your own internal capacity to bond with and value that external stimulus. It means the only love you can truly control, feel, and own is the love you generate.
So what does this all mean for the person listening who's searching for solutions to feeling lonely or dependent? It means the power is always, always internal. If love is always generated by ourselves, if it's a bond we perform, then it's always an act that comes from us. It's something we do, never something that is passively done to us.
And this realization is incredibly empowering, especially if you feel frustrated or passive in your emotional life. It completely removes the passive waiting game.
You don't wait to receive love from a partner or a demanding job or a successful achievement to feel whole.
No. You recognize that you must actively generate it through your own capacity to bond and value the reality around you. Waiting for it to come to you is waiting for a feeling you already possess the tools to create.
I'm thinking about the common scenario where someone leaves a relationship and feels utterly empty, believing the supply of love has been cut off. This definition radically flips the script.
It changes everything about that experience.
The true source of the feeling wasn't external. The loss is the sudden removal of the external stimulus that triggered their own internal capacity to bond.
Yes, the capacity to bond, the engine, is still there. It's waiting to be directed toward reality again. The feeling of devastation comes from the failure to recognize their own internal agency in creating the feeling in the first place.
It shifts the entire dynamic from one of dependency to one of total ownership.
That's the goal. Instead of relying on external factors, that perfect partner, that successful outcome, that specific validation to provide a feeling we call received love, we recognize that the entire experience is driven by our internal capacity to value that external factor.
And that's the monumental difference between being a receiver, which is a passive state, vulnerable to change,
And being a generator, which is an active state of agency.
This radically changes the approach to seeking happiness. If you feel empty, you don't chase external validation. You look inward and ask, where am I failing to do love? Where am I failing to actively bond with the reality around me?
It takes the focus entirely off what others are failing to give you and puts it on your own capacity to engage. And that might sound like a challenging responsibility.
It does sound like a lot of work.
It is. But it is ultimately the most liberating realization you can have. It's the essence of self-mastery in emotional life. The only thing you can truly control is your own capacity to generate love, your own bonds with reality.
Because relying on an outside source means you are constantly vulnerable.
To their whims, their choices, their presence. Recognizing the flow is unidirectional. Originating from you grants you a kind of emotional resilience. Even in loss, you retain the ability to rebond, reappropriate, and reconnect because the capacity, the tool, remains intact and entirely within your control.
That's a massive philosophical and psychological pivot. The minute you realize you are the source, the whole world shifts from being a stage where you wait for others to act to a world where you are the primary actor.
The only way to find satisfaction is to stop searching for it outside and start generating it internally by choosing to bond with the reality of what exists right now.
Let's pose this to you as a point of immediate practical reflection.
Really think on this.
If the feeling of being loved is actually your own love for the idea of being important, where can you intentionally increase your acts of doing love today? not waiting for a stimulus, but generating the bond yourself.
Think specifically about one area, a relationship, a personal project, or even a moment of self-care. How can you stop waiting for external approval and actively generate that bond, taking ownership of the feeling?
All right, so if love is defined as a bond with reality, what happens when we try to establish a bond with something that simply isn't real? Like a deep-seated fantasy, or an idealized projection, or just a comfortable, convenient lie?
The source addresses this directly. If we call this illusory connection love, we have to immediately categorize it as something fundamentally different and, well, far more fragile than the genuine bond with reality.
But we do it all the time.
We do. We can, and often do, create intense emotional bonds with fantasies. For example, claiming you're in love, not with your real partner, but with the idea of an idealized, flawless partner who meets every impossible expectation you hold.
This is where so much frustration lives, isn't it? The inevitable grinding clash between impossible expectation and messy, flawed existence.
To illustrate the cost of this, let's look at the powerful contrast the source provides. Imagine the love for a real pet versus the love for an idealized pet.
Okay, so the fantasy pet is perfectly trained, always compliant, never sick, never makes a mess.
It's a perfect, low-maintenance emotional mirror. The real pet, Comet, is loving, yes, but he also occasionally chews your expensive shoes, requires difficult, messy trips to the vet, and wakes you up demanding food at 5 in the morning.
In both cases, the bond initially generates pleasant emotions. You feel good thinking about either one. But what happens when reality strikes?
When reality, the real pet, with its actual flaws, its high needs, its costs, contradicts the fantasy, the expectation of the perfect pet. The illusory bond breaks instantly.
And what's left?
The illusion becomes an intense source of frustration, anger, even feelings of betrayal. You realize you loved the idea of the bond, not the reality of the being. You're disappointed because the dog failed to live up to your fantasy, not because the dog is inherently bad.
And the real love, the reality-based love, has to persist even through the 5 a.m. wake-up calls and the chewed shoes. It's a commitment to the whole package, including the painful parts.
Absolutely. Love anchored to reality embraces the subject, flaws and all. This commitment to the real, even when it involves pain or discomfort, is what promotes long-term personal growth and genuine satisfaction.
So when Comet is sick,
the bond holds, even though it demands suffering, sacrifice, and financial expense. That suffering, in this context, is the non-negotiable price of maintaining a strong bond with reality.
this is why you hear that tough saying from philosophers. To desire is to enjoy, to love is to suffer. Desire is easy, it's immediately pleasurable because it lives purely in the imagination, disconnected from effort or consequence.
But the bond of love, precisely because it is anchored to reality, often involves pain or discomfort. Reality is messy. People are imperfect. Commitment requires sacrifice. Life is hard.
And if you choose to bond with that difficult truth,
You must accept the necessary suffering and effort. But this suffering is precisely the foundation for lasting well-being and growth because it forces you to adapt, to stretch, and to commit beyond superficial feelings. Fantasy demands that reality change for you. Reality-based love demands that you change for it.
that's a profound distinction. Now let's shift from personal bonds to something the source calls symbolic love.
Okay.
This is the bond we establish with symbols, objects, ideas, representations that stand in for aspects of existence. We're constantly channeling our bonds through symbols without even realizing how fragile they are.
And this is critical because it explains why people get so devastated when, say, public figures fall from grace, or when cherished institutions fail.
Right.
The source uses the compelling example of loving a fictional character, like Captain Jack Sparrow. We love him not just because he's a charismatic fictional entity.
Right, he's not real.
No, we love him because he represents specific, real-world qualities that we value. Wit, cunning, confidence, determination, a kind of roguish freedom.
We are, in essence, bonding with the idea of charismatic freedom through the symbol of Jack Sparrow.
Yes, the symbol acts as a conduit for bonding with those real values. However, the inherent problem with symbolic love is its extreme fragility and mutability, its tendency to change or break easily, without warning.
How does that fragility show up?
Well, consider the fictional character again. If the character changes in a new version, a bad script, a different actor, a poor adaptation, the emotional relationship we have with them transforms or breaks entirely.
Right, the new movie comes out and it's terrible and you feel let down.
Exactly. Suddenly, the vessel for our cherished attributes is tainted or inconsistent, and the bond dissolves. We feel betrayed, not by the character, but because the reality of the new symbol contradicts the perfected fantasy we had bonded with.
And this fragility is exactly what happens in our real relationships when we realize we only love what the other person represents to the outside world.
Yes, like a trophy or financial security or status, not who they actually are in the quiet moments of imperfection.
So if I bond only with the idea of what my partner represents and not with their actual evolving personality,
The love is symbolic and shallow. When that representation changes, the job is lost, the social status declines. The love dissolves instantly because the core commitment was never with the reality of the person, it was with a mutable symbol.
the source also points out how cultural context proves the instability of symbols.
A gesture of respect in one place could be a profound offense in another. A political symbol that meant hope 50 years ago might mean oppression today. This proves that the bond isn't anchored to stable reality, but to local interpretation.
And that instability makes symbolic love highly susceptible to frustration when those contexts clash.
Right. We feel angry when a symbol we cherish is reinterpreted by someone else, because that reinterpretation threatens our specific, fragile bond.
So, symbolic love isn't inherently negative because it helps us channel values, but we have to be aware that it's high risk. It's extremely fragile, unlike genuine love based on reality, which is difficult, often painful, but ultimately lasting and growth-promoting.
Choosing reality means choosing stability over convenience. It demands a conscious effort to look past the attractive wrapping paper and bond with the messy reality inside.
Okay, let's take a moment to absorb the difference between the easy fantasy that crumbles and the difficult reality that sustains.
Think about this one honestly.
Where are you currently mistaking a fragile, idealized fantasy for a solid, reality-based bond in your life? And what pain are you avoiding by choosing the fantasy?
Think about the objects of your deepest dissatisfaction. Are you genuinely disappointed by reality? Or are you disappointed because reality failed to meet a comfortable fantasy you projected onto it?
All right, this is a deep topic.
If we have established that love is the essential active bond with what is real, with existence, flaws and all, we must define its necessary opposite.
Right.
And the source provides a remarkably insightful definition. Hatred is defined as the active, aggressive relationship with lies.
A lie, by definition, is a statement or a belief that fundamentally denies reality. So if hatred is rooted in lies, where do these corrosive, self-destructive lies usually come from? Especially when they fuel things like pervasive resentment or anger.
They often come from fantasies about who we believe we should be, rather than anchoring in the concrete, imperfect reality of who we currently are.
Okay, so we build a fake self.
We create a rigid internal template. The lie of the perfect self, the flawless job, the painless life. This creates an intense internal dissonance, a conflict between what is our methy existence and what we believe we must be, the unattainable fantasy. This lie creates the fertile ground for hatred.
So hatred isn't just an external animosity directed at others. It begins as a high-stakes internal conflict between the real self and the idealized, unattainable self.
Absolutely. This dissonance, this clash between the internal fantasy, the comfortable lie we cling to, and external reality, it generates intense discomfort and emotional turbulence. The self that adheres to the lie is incredibly fragile.
Wow.
Because reality constantly threatens to expose it. So when we encounter something, a person, an idea, an event that starkly contradicts our internal lie, we perceive that difference as an immediate existential attack on our false identity.
And that perceived threat is the trigger.
It's the trigger for anger, then violence. We are defending the lie we built our identity around. Hatred is the aggressive defense of the internal lie.
So it's an aggressive rejection of reality.
Because that reality contradicts our cherished internal narrative. We attack the messenger, the reality, for challenging the deeply held fantasy.
Let's give the listeners some concrete examples of these internal lies that people commonly defend.
Certainly. A common one is, I must be financially successful and secure to be worthy of love. When that person meets someone who is happy despite being poor, or they lose their own job, that reality challenges the foundation of their identity lie.
And they react with anger.
Anger or resentment toward the external trigger. Another lie might be, my family must be perfect and function exactly according to the script. When a family member makes a messy, painful choice, that person attacks the family member for failing to uphold the fantasy structure.
In all these cases, the energy isn't going into solving the actual problem. It's going into protecting the rigid, impossible expectation.
Precisely. And the persuasive takeaway here is critical for finding solutions.
Yeah.
If you want to move away from destructive feelings, from bitterness, resentment, or hatred, you have to stop investing energy in defending the lies and fantasies about what you should be.
You have to anchor yourself firmly in the reality of what you are.
You have to choose the painful bond with truth, which is love, over the comfortable lie, which is the breeding ground for hatred.
This explains why dissatisfaction is so common and feels so pervasive. That feeling of being perpetually unsettled, of constant anxiety, it comes from that uncomfortable, vibrating space between existence, reality, which is messy and imperfect, and the persistent denial of it, the lie or fantasy that life should be simple or painless.
To live without that exhausting internal conflict, you have to minimize the space between those 2 points. And the only way to truly shrink that gap is by relentlessly choosing reality, which is the definition of the act of love.
So anything that pushes you toward denial or avoidance
is pushing you toward the exact conditions that breed hatred and dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
It's a choice between self-acceptance and self-aggression.
That's a profound connection. The next time you feel that intense rush of aggression or resentment, pause and ask, what is the reality I am currently denying?
It's a powerful diagnostic tool.
What foundational beliefs or fantasies about yourself or your situation, e.g. that you must be flawless, or that life must be fair, might actually be lies that are generating dissonance and discomfort in your life right now?
If something constantly makes you angry or defensive, ask yourself what specific, inconvenient reality is being denied in that interaction. The anger is the alarm bell telling you your lie is being challenged.
We've built a foundational framework. Love is the self-generated bond with reality. Fantasy is fragile. Hatred is the aggressive defense of a comforting lie. We've established that the path to satisfaction is active, internal, and reality-based. Now, the source material offers 3 fundamental questions designed to help you, the listener, put all this knowledge into immediate action.
To locate yourself in life, as the source puts it.
Right. And these questions are the final check.
They're designed to force accountability and immediate practical application, which is vital if you're looking for sustainable solutions and not just abstract philosophy. They move you instantly from analysis to concrete action.
Let's start with the first one, which is essentially a fierce demand for personal agency.
It is.
Number 1, if not me, who?
This question connects directly back to that radical idea in section 2. Love is what we generate. Love is what we do. If the essential bonds connecting us to reality are ours to create and maintain, then we cannot delegate the responsibility for our bonds, our happiness, or our connection to reality to someone else.
Not to a partner, a boss, the government, or fate.
You can't. It's a harsh but necessary rejection of the victim mentality. The moment you say, I can't do this until they change, you are delaying your own bond with reality.
Give us an application for that.
Think about a challenging situation. Say you're dissatisfied with your career or your health. If you need a change, if you need a specific bond to be stronger, a deeper connection to your work, a greater acceptance of yourself, a healthier relationship with your body, you must be the one to start the action.
You can't wait for someone else to do it for you.
It's a demand for personal responsibility. If you don't take the initiative to bond with reality, the comfortable lie or the debilitating fantasy will just fill the void.
If you need to have a difficult conversation with a family member and you are waiting for them to start it, the question is, if not me, who is going to create the bond of genuine communication? The answer is always you.
And the moment you accept that agency, you reclaim power. You stop being subject to the whims of others and start being the author of your own connections.
The second question immediately follows that call to action. It addresses the most common hurdle: procrastination, avoidance.
Right.
Number 2, if not now, when?
This question addresses the resistance of denial and procrastination, which, as we established, are 2 powerful forms of avoiding the reality of the present. We so often live in the should have of the past or the will be of the future.
And we sacrifice the only place we actually exist, which is the present moment.
Reality exists only in the present. You can analyze a problem you need to solve, but all the real components exist now. The past is a memory we can't change. The future is a projection we can't inhabit.
So if love is the bond with reality,
then the act of loving, the act of bonding, can only happen in the current moment. Delaying the action is delaying the bond, which in turn reinforces the fantasy or the lie that things will magically change later without effort.
procrastination isn't just laziness then.
No, it is the choice of temporary emotional comfort over the necessary commitment to reality.
Let's apply this to self-acceptance. If you're waiting to start exercising until you're more motivated, or waiting to accept yourself until you lose weight,
You're reinforcing the lie that your current self is unacceptable. The bond must be established now with the person you are. This requires immense courage because the now is always messy and involves the potential for pain and effort. But that pain is the price of the bond with reality,
to delay is to choose the path of least resistance.
which inevitably leads back to the fragility of fantasy and chronic dissatisfaction.
And finally, the third question. This one summarizes the entire deep dive. It's the ultimate filter for decision-making in any challenging situation.
This is the one that ties it all together.
Number 3, if not with love, how?
This encapsulates the choice we face every single day. We've seen that the bond with reality love often involves suffering, difficulty, and commitment, but it leads to genuine, stable satisfaction and growth.
And the alternative?
Conversely, if we try to approach reality through denial, fantasy, avoidance, or aggression, the path of hatred, we generate dissonance, pain, and perpetual frustration.
So in any given difficult situation, a financial crisis, a complex professional challenge, a failure of character, this question forces a choice.
Are you going to approach this problem from a place of painful truth, commitment, and acceptance, which is love? Or are you going to approach it from a place of denial, blame, and aggression, which is the lie?
The application seems absolutely clear.
Love the bond with what is real, flaws included, is the only authentic, long-term pathway to satisfaction and personal growth. Any attempt to solve problems without embracing the truth of reality is doomed to fail. It means consciously choosing the painful truth over the comfortable fantasy, and choosing acceptance over denial.
So it's committing to the reality of the situation no matter how much effort it requires.
That's the only way through.
These are 3 simple yet profound tools. When you use them together, they stop you from outsourcing your happiness and force you to build a sustainable life rooted entirely in reality.
They move you immediately from the passive emotional life, where you wait for things to happen to you, to the active life of agency and commitment, where you are the creator of your own bonds.
They demand a level of internal honesty that is challenging for sure.
But they provide the structure for the immense power that comes from knowing you are the sole, internal creator and maintainer of your most important bonds with existence. They are the keys to emotional invincibility.
Okay, for our final moment of reflection, let's consider these tools in the context of your greatest challenge right now.
Be honest with yourself on this one.
Which of these 3 questions challenges you the most right now? The who, the when, or the how? And what single small step could you take to answer authentically moving forward with love?
Pick one, commit to the bond, and take the step right now.
We've reached the surface of this deep dive, where we redefine love as the single most important self-generated bond connecting us to reality. And we discovered that true love is fundamentally an action we perform, not a gift we passively receive or wait for.
Remember, this perspective gives you immense internal power and ends the exhausting waiting game. You are not a victim of external circumstances or the failure of others to validate you.
By choosing the bond with reality over the pursuit of fantasy,
We move away from frustration and towards genuine, difficult, but profoundly rewarding growth.
thank you for joining us on this essential exploration of what it means to truly connect and how to use that connection to define your own reality.
Don't simply take our word for it. Put everything you heard here to the test. Make this knowledge truly yours.
We invite you to share your ideas, your thoughts, and experiences in the comment section, to like the podcast if you enjoy it or it was useful to you, and subscribe to learn more about similar topics.
Remember, the power is yours.
Running circles, trading names, repeating all the same mistakes. I shaped a version in my head, perfect lines you never said, scrolling past 1,000 signs, convincing myself I was fine, holding on to empty space, calling absence something safe. Hey. Wait, something shifted here, I feel the ground instead of fear. Is this what real feels like?